Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton, and I'm here today with Angela Jones, who is one of the co-founders of Petscribers. Thanks for coming all the way up to sunny Peterborough, Angela.
Oh, you're welcome. It looks a little bit like the Cotswolds. I felt quite at home. Lots of sandstone buildings, pretty villages. It's quite nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like if the Cotswolds had no investment for the last 50 years. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perhaps. I thought it was very pretty, with or without investment.
Yeah, so Angela, set up this new site,
Yep.
Petscribers, which is a site which is looking to democratize the price of veterinary medicine.
Yeah.
Uh,
In a nutshell.
yeah, so just tell us like about your history, how you sort of got to where you are,
Yeah.
and what you're doing.
Of course. So I'm a vet. So I'm a vet, a mum, and we co-founded Petscribers we started it about 3 years ago now. I graduated from Bristol Vet School in 2009, and I've been in equine practice ever since, combining my love of ponies and my problem-solving capabilities, I suppose. So I started out in Pembrokeshire in West Wales, so that would have been an even further drive. Then I moved to the home counties, and I was the vet for the police force for 7 years. And then moved to the Cotswolds in 2016, which is where I met Em, which is my co-founder. I also sit in the British Equine Council, which is quite handy. And yes, that's about a bit about me, really. I am an equine medicine certificate holder, so I have an interest in internal medicine. But Em and I met at the practice in the Cotswolds. So me being an equine vet and Em being a Smalley's vet. So we were seeing increasing numbers of owners not being able to afford the medication that they deserve for their pets. And from our perspective, writing a prescription is a real faff. So from my perspective, I was in the car, so I was out on the road, and I didn't have access to a practice management system. So I was unable to create a prescription on the road. So if somebody asked me for a prescription, I would have to call my receptionist, who would then create a Word document, convert it into a PDF, and then wait for me to grace her with my presence in the office before I signed it, which could take anything from that day or a few days later. So the lead time for the owner was quite a long time. From Em's perspective, she was in a consult room. She had 15 minutes, and she'd have to examine the animal, prescribe medication, come up with a diagnosis, prescribe medication, and then if they asked for a written prescription, it was often at the end of a consult, being like, "Can I get a written prescription for this?" And she'd have to say, "You're going to have to wait 2 days until I have the time to do it." And admin time in the vet world is non-existent, and so it's often done sort of after hours or during lunch breaks. And so we just felt that there must have been a better way. And considering that we're not anti-vet at all, but owners aren't aware that they can purchase online. So 50% of owners don't know that they can ask for a written prescription and they can purchase their medication online. And even if they do know, they're too concerned about the process. So the process of buying online is quite laborious, like we've just chatted about. And then even if they're not scared by the process, they're worried about buying counterfeit medication. And that is a real concern. So 1 in 10 medications are now counterfeit that owners buy. Last November, there was a really public case where some owners purchased a joint supplement on Amazon, thinking that it gave them some kind of
Yeah, I remember that.
security. Yeah,
Yeah, you move, wasn't it?
yeah, it was, and dogs died, and so the counterfeit medication is a real concern. So we started going about sort of investigating how we could make it better. So not just for vets, but for owners as well. And we found that it's really difficult to compare medication costs. So when you look at different pharmacies, even if you know where to look, people don't know how to know it's safe. They don't know where to look for the medication. They don't know how to compare two different things when they're perhaps two different brands or there's different versions of the same drug. And so Em and I set about to try and solve this enormous problem and create this all-encompassing e-prescribing platform. And so we sought some expert advice, and a lovely UX lady called Vic said, "Oh, that's going to be really, really expensive to build off the bat." And so we broke it down into a few more layers. So our first phase that we've created. So we now have an MVP, and that is essentially a price comparison website for pet medication. So you can get a prescription from your vet, you can go on Petscribers, or you can type in the medication you've been prescribed, and it will compare the services from varying providers based on cost, speed of delivery. So if you need it tomorrow, and also whether you're shopping from a small business or a large corporate. And then it will allow you to compare on those things. And so the owner will have more transparency over where they're buying their medication from. And then phase two is all about building that sort of personalized experience where owners have their very own profile for each of their pets, and it will help them manage these much more complex medication schedules, particularly if something has a cardiac problem or something that has multiple medications that need to be given at different times. And so it will prompt them to give their medication. It will say, "Have you given them their breakfast?" Or "Have you need to give this before breakfast." It will be able to tell them when they need to go back and get a prescription check from the vet. It will tell them when they need to reorder medication, so they won't have to bridge the gap and go and buy more expensive medication from the practice. And also, it will signpost them to other facilities. So whether or not they need if they're arthritic and they could benefit from physio or from acupuncture or hydrotherapy, it'll help signpost them to those places. And then phase three is hopefully integrating with those pharmacies. So as opposed to us sending them a prescription, we will then be able to send them direct links via API, sending them all the information that they need. And then phase four is integrating with veterinary practices and creating that written prescription software that Em and I really dreamed about creating, which will save so much time for vets. So essentially, now a written prescription, by the time you populate all the information on it, you have to know your dose rate, you have to know the concentration of the medication, you need to know what box size it comes in, and by auto populating all of those fields, we'll be able to save vets a significant amount of time and a lot of head work during their day. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that is what we are building. And Em and I started it. We sort of was in the back office complaining about, well, a deep love of cardiology, really, and a deep hatred of written prescriptions because we're both in there sort of doing our prescriptions of an evening. And yeah, that's sort of where it came from. And yeah, we've built the MVP, and now we're hoping to launch this month.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a big undertaking because
Yeah,
like obviously someone in the industry, I kind of look at veterinary medication, and obviously like at least half of it, yeah, you're on board with it and that sort of stuff. But I think like trying to actually um, open it up, I think be more transparent with it is so important because, I mean, look, one thing we complain about a lot in industry is things like veterinary diets. And while there are some which are very good, there's a lot of really bad veterinary diets, like which are made by some of the big companies, very low meat content, like use sugar, stuff like caramel, that sort of stuff in there, and so just actually being able to put that out online in a democratized way and actually show alternatives is important. And also, look, there's also going to be alternatives that don't require a prescription as well,
yeah.
and actually showing people what some of the real like for likes can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about transparency. You wouldn't expect to go into a supermarket and buy, a bag of apples for £10 and a bag of potatoes for one, and say that the cost was included in the other. You'd expect to know exactly what you're paying for. And I think from our perspective, that's where it comes from, an increased transparency. We're really pro vets charging appropriately for their fees and their time, but we think an owner should know exactly what they're paying for and when. So that's really what we want. And it's such a tricky problem to try and solve, because there's just so many stakeholders, from the pharmaceutical companies to the veterinary medicines directorate to the vets and the pharmacy owners. There's just so many wheels within that machine. So trying to get them all on one page is really tricky. But the CMA, so the Competition Markets Authority, have launched a review into the veterinary sector, and one of the things that they are investigating is perhaps owners are paying too much for medication, and there's a lack of competition within the system, and there's a lack of transparency. So they're really trying to open it up at the moment, and we're hoping that Petscribers launch will dovetail really nicely with that, and provide a solution to a pretty big problem.
Yeah. Because like, look, I mean, I think vets have had a rough time. I think they can get a bad rap sometimes, and I always say, look, my any problems I have with the veterinary industries and with the vets,
No.
it's with the industry as a whole because of the way pharmaceutical companies are. have their roots in, the way that dog food manufacturers have their roots in, um, and the the corporatization of vets as well. So the
Mm.
chains and what they require, the pressure they put vets under, to get through, blast through the different patients, but also the almost like the almost upselling of certain things as well. And
You're absolutely right. It's the vets at ground level genuinely want what's best for
yeah,
the animal in front of them. They don't have any other motivation of their own other than to treat the patient in front of them. And so if we can offer them a safe place, if someone requests a written prescription, rather than just sending that owner off to blindly research where they might be able to go, by saying if you go to Petscribers, all the retailers will be veterinary medicines directorate registered. So you will know it's a safe medication. It won't be counterfeit. You'll know it's somewhere that's safe that you can go to. It's completely unbiased. So we're not owned by a corporate. We're not owned by anyone. We have our own, we're able to compare in a completely our own way. We're completely independent. So we have no motive other than signposting people to the medication that their animal needs. So from that perspective, we've had quite a lot of interest from veterinary surgeons because at the moment they're not allowed to advertise a pharmacy. They're not allowed to say you can go to this pharmacy, the veterinary pharmacy. I'm just making up a name, but they're not able to signpost people to somewhere directly. They don't. If you ask a vet off the top of their head, they can't usually name more than a couple of pharmacies off the top of their head. So by giving them somewhere independent and unbiased that they could send an owner to, knowing that they will get the medication they need at the best possible price, or the fastest, or from an independent retailer. I think it gives them the safety, and they're doing the right thing
mm,
for the animal. But obviously, it's a big education piece over it with owners, telling them that they can purchase online and how they can purchase online. And that's a big hurdle that Em and I have to overcome. And we're hoping the CMA review will really help us with that.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny because I did a podcast with Dignity Pet Crematorium,
Hmm.
just talking about the cremation industry and that sort of stuff. And I do think that like I say, while vets are, most people who are vets are getting into the right reasons. They
Yeah,
love animals. That's why they're doing it. They want to help
totally.
people. I do think that the corporate structure of vets with the big guys like your Medivets and the Vets for Pets and people like that, it puts a very different onus on the industry, and there's not the transparency going from back to front. Like so, when I spoke to Dignity Pet Crematorium, we talked about um, you know, the fact that a lot of the corporates would own their own
Mm.
crematoriums, and that what goes on behind the scenes there isn't what you would expect
Oh,
from
really?
from a crematorium. Yeah, but again, how would the vets know that? Because they're just sort of said, well, your dog dies. Would you like communal or mass? And
Mm.
and you can give somebody a brochure which
Yeah,
doesn't really represent anything. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's become it's there's not the transparency there, and it's not like they have like a catalog of different options
no.
available. It's very much like, that's your options, option A, option B. And I think again, this another problem with, let's say, the prescribing of medications,
Mhm.
the prescribing of dog food, is that it's sort of like you're in that situation. It's sort of like, well, here's the prescription, but here's the food. You don't really get a
It's a
choice. You
it's a
don't really.
convenience, isn't it?
But it's almost not even a convenience. It's almost like, how can I say it? Like it's kind of like, if you don't want to buy that from them, it's almost like, what do you mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know, in the CMA review, they found that one of the reasons that owners purchased from the vet is they were too worried to ask for, to
Yeah.
ask for anything else, to go elsewhere. And I think that might be more on. I don't think a vet would be offended if you asked them for a prescription, but I can see why they would be worried about
No,
it.
but it's the language you use.
Yeah,
And this is the thing, is that there should be a regulation in place whereby the vet has to ask, would you like the prescription, or would you like to buy it from our own stocks?
absolutely.
Like, rather than just saying you need X, Y, and Z, well, they'll get them ready at the counter,
Yeah.
because that's not really a choice. If I said to you, um, say we're going for lunch, and I just turn up at a pizza place, walk in and sit down, you're going, All right, what pizza are you having? Like, maybe you didn't want pizza, do you know? But I've just walked you into a pizza
I
place.
do like pizza, you're
Yeah,
vegan.
no, good job. Like, because that's your options then,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like that. If you know your dog needs oh, you're there with the vet, and the vet says, oh well, the dog needs this certain food,
Mm.
and you're like, okay, well, I guess so. That's where the conversation stops,
Yeah.
because then the next thing you know, you're getting billed for the food at the counter.
Mm.
Whereas what it should be is, well, I think your dog needs a such and such specific food. Um, I'll write you a prescription for that. Would you like to buy it from us, or would you like to take the prescription away and buy it elsewhere? Because then you're allowed to choose.
And it's all about choice, isn't it?
Yeah,
And empowering people to know that they have that choice.
yeah,
And then on the flip side, having people at the coalface offering that choice. So in Scandinavian countries, for example, they've completely uncoupled diagnosis from fulfillment. So if
yeah,
you diagnosis and prescription from fulfillment. So if you're in Finland, for example, the vet will say what you need and you will go wherever you
yeah.
choose to fulfill that medication. Now, whether or not the CMA will go that far in the UK, or whether or not they'll just say to vets that you need to make them aware of the choice. So, currently, since 2005, it's been a legal obligation. If somebody requests a prescription from a veterinary surgeon, they are obliged to provide it. So, that was the first CMA review into the sector. And so, if somebody requests it, you have to give it. They also have to have a sign up in the office saying you can request a written prescription. Now, I wonder, and this is complete speculation, whether or not the CMA will make it obligatory, like you said, to give people that choice. Would you like to get it from me, or would you like to get it from elsewhere?
I'd like to see him go further, because
Mm.
look, if I went into a doctor's
Hmm.
surgery and the doctor done like a little check on me, or let's say I took my son in there
Hmm.
and I took he done a little check on him, goes, right, he needs Heinz baked beans for dinner tonight. Um, Pick him up at the counter, pick your prescription up at the counter in my doctor's surgery, and then you walk round to the front and they give you a bill for 50 quid for some Heinz baked beans. You're kind of press ganged into it, but we don't have that system.
Mm.
They give you a prescription which you can take to the pharmacy of your choice.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
Well, better still, they e-prescribe it now, don't they? So they
well,
send it digitally to a
exactly.
prescription of your choice.
I think the moment that vets are allowed to sell products, whether that be prescription, whether it be food, whether it be toys, anything, I think it creates a massive conflict of interest.
I don't feel there's ever going to be, we're never going to remove the requirement for point of care medication. So if your son went into there sick, would you, and he needed those baked beans
Yes.
immediately, do you think you would say, oh, hang on the baked beans, he's really sick, but I need to go and shop
No.
elsewhere?
No, I agree.
Yeah,
It Look, in the situations you bring your dog in sick and it needs an operation, it's not going to go,
absolutely.
well, look, I'll give you a shopping list, go down the shops and get me all these
Yeah.
medicines I need. I'm not saying that.
Sorry, just
I'm talking about the more like longer term, when you go to the
absolutely.
like, let's say, a dietary, something like flea and tick,
Absolutely.
something like long term usage products,
Hmm.
um, things which you don't need on the spot. Now you could have you could limit them to saying, right, well, they can sell up to 3 days at a time. Worse, the rest they have to give you a prescription for,
Mm.
and that 3 days at a time worth should be maybe thrown in with the cost of the consult, rather than being an individual thing. There's
But then
ways.
that's not transparent either. If you throw it in
Okay,
with the price of the
no,
consult,
but
I
okay,
know.
but
I'm just being devil's advocate here.
there would be ways to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is I'm not saying I have the answers, because what do I know?
No.
I don't have the answers. But my point is that I feel that the more you can um, deprofitize the care part of anybody's lifestyle, whether it be with themselves or with their animals, the better decisions people are going to make on both sides of the fence. If that makes sense.
Just gives them the choice to make their
Yeah.
own decisions. I feel at the moment they don't understand their choices, which is even they don't even realize there is a choice. And so that's where we want to get to, where people understand their options, they understand where they're getting them from, and they are free and empowered to make their own choice. Whether that's, like I said, you will never remove the necessity for point of care medication. There'll be dogs that come in sick, there'll be dogs that come in with ear infections that need that there and then. But like you said, it's those flea tick and wormers, those long term medications, those the you know the your your anti-inflammatories, your heart meds, things that they're on for a really long
Yeah,
time are critical. Now, one thing, often a vet will stock one brand of a medication, so they will write the medication that they've been prescribed on the prescription if they write one for you. And the other thing that we're really passionate about is, educating owners in the fact that, do you know there's more than one form of this medication?
yeah.
So, for example, if we use meloxicam, which is Metacam, there's minoxidil, there's Loxicom, there's all different
Mm,
brands of that. And just like you can go and buy Nurofen from Tesco's, or you can buy sort of the Tesco own brand one, well, any supermarket own
yeah,
brand one. The same system exists in medication in the veterinary world. So it's just educating people that perhaps, oh, you had this last time. These are other possible options that you could potentially ask your vet for next time, and this would save you that much.
yeah. No, and look, that's the way I'd like to see it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think that the current system we have is anti-competitive and it's bad for consumers. And like I say, you can say, yeah, but if they wanted a prescription, they could have one. But we also know that like most people, like you've got to be a certain type of person to say no. I
Mm.
want a prescription. I don't want this right now. Because it's an aggressive. You turn like the fact that you actually have to be aggressive about it. Like, and although
It's just taking the power, isn't it? It's
yeah,
having it's like I said,
Mo
it's
mo
knowing your rights and knowing that you
but
can.
most people are just kind of like, "Oh, okay." Like, if I said to you, "Your pet's died. Here's option A, here's option B." Like, there is an option C, but I'm just not offering it to you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So being transparent with everything being offered should be part of how things are worked, you know?
We completely agree.
Yeah,
We completely agree. And that's exactly where it comes from. But I think as well, there will always be some owners that are just like, oh, I'll just get it from, but it's the choice.
yeah,
It's the giving them the ability to choose that we're super, super passionate about. And we beta tested Petscribers on 200 users sort of in the first quarter of the year. And the feedback was really positive. Because people didn't even know lots of these pharmacies existed. So
yeah,
it's there's some big names that people will be aware of, but some of the smaller ones they didn't know they existed. And what you find with pharmacies as well, which is really interesting, is they all have their USP. They all have something that they are much more competitive on than others because they buy more of it or they sell more of it, so their buying power is greater.
mm,
And so you'll find that one pharmacy will be really competitive on something, another will be really competitive on something else, and so it would be near impossible for an owner to sort sift the sugar from the sand in that respect. And I did it when we first started sort of investigating if Petscribers could work and how much we could save people, and sort of looking into the fine detail of what we were thinking of doing. It took me a day to compare the top 10 medications across all the pharmacies. And that's me. That's a subject matter expert that knows medication pretty
mm,
well. Yes, I'm a horse vet, not a small animal vet, and I was comparing, all medications across the board. But it's hard. It's hard to do. And people say, oh, well, Google does that for you, but it doesn't necessarily compare the right pack size. It doesn't necessarily compare the right brand. So it absolutely can, but not in the same way. It doesn't take into account delivery costs or free delivery. So all those things that we've been able to build in will give people a much better idea of what they're buying and what they're doing.
yeah. Well, it is more complex than like just lining up, I don't know, the price of tins of Coke or something like that,
Yeah.
isn't it? Is it? And that's why we have things like compare the market
Mm.
for things like insurance because it is a more varied market and there's alternatives there and that sort of
And
stuff.
there's
So
people's preferences as well. Somebody might want to buy from a small business as opposed to a much larger pharmacy, and again, that's their choice. But owners aren't always necessarily aware of the corporate versus independent structure in the UK, and so even and they don't know that extends to pharmacies as well. So we just want people to have all the information that they need to move forward and make the best decision for their pet, whatever that decision might be. So yeah, we're very pro transparency.
so how did obviously you've had to have got all of these pharmacies on board with the
Mm.
project. I'd imagine getting the smaller ones on board's easy, but how did you find, let's say, I don't know, bringing someone like VioVet on, like who are, let's say, relative market leaders?
Yeah, they were delightful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely delightful. It's been a mixed bag, really. So we have spoken to an awful lot of pharmacies. There's I think we lost one recently, but I think there's 17 now in the UK of pharmacies that can provide medication. Some of them have said they feel that they don't want to engage with Petscribers, which is absolutely fine. Some of them are waiting to see what our launch looks like and what what it how it pans out and whether we fully get it to market, which we can. And then we have a cohort of probably about representing maybe 40 to 50% of market share of the pharmacies on board now, or yeah, on with agreements with us. But yeah, you name Biovet, they've been absolutely delightful. Actually,
Yeah.
they've been really lovely to work with. So yeah, we really enjoy chatting to them. But we spoke interestingly to someone that was the CEO of Compare the Market. You mentioned them earlier as well.
Yeah.
We spoke to him
Yeah, I
recently.
met Sergey, innit?
No.
Al
Yeah.
Alexander, is it?
Alexander,
The
yeah,
Russian guy,
exactly.
Russian guy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, the meerkat. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
CEO. We had a really great chat with the meerkat. So but he's not currently the CEO, but he said it took them 20 years to get Aviva on board when they were starting.
Wow.
So in terms of how we present it to people, we have 97% of medications listed on our site between the pharmacies that we have. Um, and the savings that we can make them are real.
Yeah.
And so dressing it up as we have basically all the medications versus all the pharmacies, I think it's a really important differentiation to make, because the savings that you can make, irrespective of whether we've got 100% of the pharmacies on board, are still significant to the owners involved.
Well, it's a bit like the Just Eat phenomena or something like that, isn't it? Is that actually um, people might be against it because it's like, well, why would I give any? Because I'm assuming they're giving you some kind of revenue
Yeah, it's an
for,
affiliate fee.
yeah,
Yeah.
an affiliate fee,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like, why would I give anything to you
Mm,
to be on your platform? You know, because I'm doing great over here. But the truth is that once something like that takes hold, like a compare the market, and if you're an Aviva and you're not on there, then you're not even in the running
yeah.
to get the to get people on board to actually buy their insurance policy, because you're not going to go, like years ago. I mean, I remember with insurance, I'm old enough to predate all this stuff, and like, it would be like your car insurance would be up and you'd be on the
Oh.
phone, yellow pages, like each call would be like 20 minutes
Oh, the
long. It's
yellow
like,
pages.
oh,
Oh, the good old days.
yeah, you'd be on the phone. Every call would be 20 minutes long, and you'd call four or five, and you'd be like, "I'm done. I can't talk anything more to these people."
Can you even imagine having to shop around for your insurance? That's the thing,
Yeah,
and that's what I want to get to with
yeah.
medications. Can you even imagine trying to search this on your own? Because it's freaking
Well,
impossible.
but it was a bit like takeaway menus before Just Eat. You'd have like a little basket on the side in your house, like where you'd have all the different takeaway menus.
We don't have Just Eat in the Cotswolds, so we still have a
Do you
basket.
know?
No, no. Well, not we do, probably in some, but not in Tetbury. There was, we had an Uber the other day for a small period, and that was really exciting. So
Oh, really,
yeah.
really. But people went outside and
I
with
know, like
flags, and
raising
yeah,
flags.
no,
Yeah,
no.
we know. Yeah, I remember going to a Christmas party when I first moved to the Cotswolds, having lived sort of in just outside London and worked in London, and my boss at the time, who is actually she's a president of the RCVS now, went to the Christmas party, and she was like, "How are you getting home?" And I went, "Oh, taxi." And she laughed at me, and I was like, "Why are you laughing at me, Linda? Like, what's so funny?" She's like, "Firstly, check your phone. You don't have any signal. Secondly, if you didn't book it a month ago, then you're not getting a taxi. And thirdly, good luck." It
But
was just so
it
funny.
reminds me. So this is going back to when I was young. When I first started wholesaling, I remember I went down to see a potential customer in a place called Chillum Animal Feeds. It was called, and I remember looking, oh yeah, I could get the train to Chillum, and then when I get to Chillum, I'll just get a taxi.
Mm.
Like this typical London
Yeah.
London kid mentality, and so I got to Chillum, and it was like a field. And I was like, "There's no taxis here."
Nope.
And I remember like walking for 2 miles up a motorway to get to
Oh
this
man.
store, and I was like, and she was like, "Oh, where's your car?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I like I like got the train here." She's like, "And did what?" And like, "Yeah, walks."
It's so
Because
funny.
it's like in my head, it was like, well, I just get the train there, and then
Just get an Uber.
I'll just get a taxi when I get. I mean, this was
Oh yeah,
predated Ubers, but like at the same time, you kind of expected taxis to be in place
yeah.
outside train stations.
Yeah, it was a real wake up call for me being in yeah, in a lovely stately home. I'm in Chris's party and there's no Uber, there's no taxis, and there's no signals.
Uh,
Like welcome to the Cotswolds. It was it was
uh,
pretty good. It was pretty good.
but look, we have. That's the thing is like the modern world is what it is now, and like
Mm.
people are looking for more efficient ways to buy things, and I do think that like if we can get the CMA, to actually like even just having the wording of, you know, would you like just a prescription or would you like the actual goods or or would you like to have it, I think there should be a cooling off period with vets generally when they're doing these things anyway. Like we had this conversation on cremation, is that there should be a 24-hour cooling off period where you assess your options. Because when you're in that situation, you're like, well, you need medication. You're like, well, okay,
It's immediate, isn't it?
yeah,
You feel like you've got to make a decision there and then. And often, particularly like you said with chronic medications, you don't need to make a decision there and then. But there, like we said earlier, there are definitely some situations where you do.
yeah,
But yeah, cremation is it's such an emotional one, isn't it? And it's so hard to think of your beloved pet being anything other than next to you. So the
yeah.
thought of them, the reason I laughed at cooling off is because obviously you put them in a
Yeah,
it's
put them in the freezer.
I
Yeah,
know it sounds awful, but so yes, there is definitely a cooling off period. But it's whether or not just yeah, I think people just need information, they need options. But you're right, in an increasingly digitally native world, so people, people go to Instagram and TikTok to look for information now instead of going to Google.
yeah,
When they're looking people up, they're like, well, what does their social media say? And so these people that don't know they can purchase online are digitally native. They're people that frequently use delivery services like Amazon, like Just Eat.
yeah.
These sort of like they want quick results. They want immediate results. They want to know exactly. They're information thirsty.
Well, it always shocked me, like with like some younger people I know, that they'll get their shopping delivered by Deliveroo, and you're like, who the hell wants their shopping delivered by Deliveroo?
If you need it now,
But yeah, but if you need it now and what you can't be bothered to
I
walk
know.
5 minutes up the road to the shop. But again, this is the society we're in. Is actually everything is more and more about like comparing it, doing it online, getting it sorted online, that side of it. So
And people want things drop ship. They don't want to have to drive to the
no,
vets or drive to wherever to collect their flea, tick, and wormer. They want to know which one's best for their pet, which one, for example, if your dog swims,
no,
then a spot on's not the right choice for you
no,
in terms of one, your flea control coverage, and two, environmental impacts of what you of the treatment. You don't want to be putting a spot on your vet. So having that conversation and that advice from your vet is really critical to make sure that you get the product that you need. But going forward, you don't want to have to go into your vet to collect it. You want it to be shipped to you, and you don't want to wait for 48 hours for a prescription either, when theoretically it could be done in the consult room. You could leave with it digitally on your phone.
yeah. So as vets, I'm
Hmm.
assuming you guys aren't like like tech bros.
No.
So how has that been as a challenge? Like, because what you're doing really is obviously it's an application of tech,
Yeah,
and so
it is mega techy.
and so as vets, I mean, look, I'm not a tech bro. I'm a pet food industry bro. So it's sort of
Yeah,
like and I've had to work on. I remember building my first website for a business in like 2006, and it was like hard,
yeah,
and like you're listening to people and you're trying to find the right people to work with on the project.
absolutely.
I mean, how has that been as a challenge?
So I think building websites has become much easier. So
Oh,
in
oh,
terms
oh, for
of like your
sure.
no-code websites and things, those are super easy to make. Like even a monkey like me can use the
Yeah,
likes of Wix or WordPress. But what we needed was something more bespoke, and Em and I had to upskill pretty flipping quickly. Now, in terms of we're never going to be techie, but we had to learn what we wanted, what we didn't want, and how to talk and describe what we wanted in real tech terms. But that left us really wide and open and vulnerable to being taken the mick out of, really. So we interviewed an awful lot of developers with the idea of them being our CTO, and so they needed commercial experience, they needed tech experience, they needed stayed full stack because we couldn't afford to pay more than we were bootstrapping. We can't pay
No.
a back end and a front end. We needed everything. And so we interviewed a lot of people. And the other really important thing was, could they talk to us about tech in a way that we understood? So could they dull it down? So
Mm.
sort of like reduce it down to a level that Em and I could deal with. Now, Emma's far surpassed my tech ability now, and she's very, very product focused, and has found a love of tech that she didn't know that she had before. And so Emma's really, really upskilled in the tech side of things. But we were very lucky. So Em's brother is a developer and works in machine learning and AI, and his best man was a full stack developer. So
Okay.
we knew him by one degree of separation, and we interviewed lovely Victor. And his name's a little bit like Harry Potter. He's Victor Parchment, and we love him. And Victor is able to say, right, this is big. And help us break it down, and then help us break it down again, and document everything that he does in a way that we understand. But the upskilling in terms of tech has been massive. You know, our database alone and the encoding of all and the encryption of all of the medications is significant. And Victor's managed to reduce our database down to each line, and each important information about each medication is instilled into a single line of code. And so the encryption level, his background is in clinical trials, is in NHS data. So it's super secure and super, super high level, which again is something that I don't think Em and I really thought about when we embarked on the journey. But then obviously paying for somebody's expertise, he's got a family. So Em and I had to very quickly fund it. So we bootstrapped the first phase. We bootstrapped the entire MVP. So for 6 months, in fact, I still do work as an emergency equine vet until we have closed our funding round, because we had to pump everything we had into building our product, and that, as you know,
Yeah.
is no walk in the park. So then it brought us onto a different problem. So from tech, then you've got to pay for it, and then we've had to go for a fundraising round. So we're pre-seed fundraising at the moment, and that in itself has been a massive learning curve. So in order to facilitate the tech, we've had to learn how to talk business, which is something else that as a vet you're very used to talking to clients. You're very used to talking about a problem and finding a solution. But in terms of talking to people in an investment world, that was a really alien concept to us maybe 6 months ago. Now I'm very happy talking to anyone, I think,
Yeah.
and you can tell I'm not that shy. But in terms of talking to people that about money, it wasn't something that I was particularly comfortable with,
Yeah.
especially asking people for money. We've never been in that situation
Mm.
where you need funding from people. And the SEIS and EIS makes it a much more it de-risks it a little bit, but they're still risking money that I wouldn't
Yeah.
be willing to do.
It's interesting, like, because that's the thing. I was only really exposed to the investment world sort of a few years back, and like before that, you kind of the only sort of frame of reference you had on it was like Dragons
Yeah,
Den, which is total twaddle. It's not how things works at all because you know with SEIS funding, um, if I like for the first £250,000, I think is it
yeah,
still £250,000 um, that people put into your company, basically they're guaranteed 86% of it back as long as they're paying the tax.
pretty much. Depending on which tax bracket they're in, I think you get 50% back, and then either 30 or 40% of the remainder of it back if it goes
If it goes
bottoms
bankrupt,
up.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, which is pretty substantial,
yeah,
and I think it makes a big difference because obviously if
huge.
I put 100 grand into it, I'm really risking 14, and
Mm.
I get 50 of it back straight away. But also these guys, they treat it- the people who are doing it. There's kind of a casino element to them.
Yeah, they are betting men.
Yeah, it's all
It's
casino to
gambling.
it's
Yeah,
all casino element to them,
yeah,
and that's another thing is that like so for them, it's like, look, 100 grand. I put 100 grand in.
mm.
You're realistically only like risking 14 as long as you're paying the right amount of tax,
That's your
etc.
exposure. Yeah,
And yeah, and it's for them. They're looking for 10x,
yeah.
and so you have to get used to saying, right, okay, if you're going to put 100 grand in, how am I going to convince you you're going to get a million out minimum?
Mm. Well, there are 22 million dogs and cats in the UK, 850,000 horses, a million rabbits, and all of them need medication. So
Yeah,
I think in terms of an odds game, so the UK pet medication UK pet medication market was worth 420 million pounds, but the UK pet health market, and if you can tap into that, is worth like 9 billion pounds, which is huge. And so, in terms of sort of like your market value and where you place yourselves, again, that was something I had no idea about.
It's always whatever you think is an outrageous figure, just double it, and
Well,
that's usually
totally.
about right.
Absolutely. And then Em and I always joke, we're like, some days we're sort of like, why on earth are we doing? Like, what are we doing? You have like these days, like today
Yeah,
almost, where, it was an absolute juggle to even get here because you're up against sort of like family commitments, home commitments, life commitments, and then traffic. It's
yeah,
it's a nightmare. And then put onto that a pitch of an evening and still working part time as a vet. Suddenly you've got quite the heady mix of
yeah.
juggle. And we do question why we're doing it, and then we're like, hang on a second. So Em's background, so hilariously, she went to Cambridge and studied natural sciences, did neuroscience, then had a hiatus as an investment banker for a year during the crash, which is hilarious, made redundant, and then put herself through vet school. So I know, ridiculous. And she's like, well, why would you not want to earn less money and work more hours? Like, why would why would you not do that?
Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like my life nowadays, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But when you look at the odds of sort of like getting into Cambridge and doing natural sciences, I think I can't remember what she said the odds were, but just for example, say it's sort of like 12 to 1. And then the chances of, and she got a first, by the way, so I'd love to know what the odds ratio of that is. But, and then you look at the odds of getting into vet school, so 16, there were when I applied, 16 applications for every one place. And then suddenly a 10 to 1 for having a startup seems freaking favorable,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, no,
It seems like
yeah,
great odds. I'd bet on
yeah,
that horse.
yeah,
So that's what we've decided, is that we are glutton for punishment. We love being up against it, and if somebody told us it was easy, we probably wouldn't do it.
yeah,
And so that's kind of where we've come to. And like we were chatting about earlier, my benchmark from the vet world is. Has anything died? No, you know.
right,
And I think over the last year, Em and I have grown phenomenally thick skin. I don't think I ever envisaged being quite so able to bounce off rejection, because for the 100 investors you speak to, you'll probably get maybe 95 no's and 5 yeses,
yeah,
and that's painful. Like, rejection is really hard, and it makes you question your life choices, it makes you question your business model, it makes you question everything. And then you meet that one person that believes in what you're doing and you can see the value in what you're doing, and all of a sudden you're on to a winner. So we're over 50% committed in our round now. And so we feel like we're getting momentum. We're talking to really big insurance companies that are interested in using Petscribers as part of their platforms. We're talking to the CMA. So when they joke about Mohammed going to the mountain, and all of a sudden, and the mountain comes to Mohammed, and it's
yeah.
big. It's huge for us to be pedaling and to be trying to make a big change. And yeah, we're really excited. I feel like we're coming out of the pit of despair and we're coming up the other side. But um yeah, it's a hard old learning curve, I think.
No. Yeah, no, for sure. And look, it is tough. Like, and anyone who's involved in startup, it's a continuous battle.
Well, you're glutton for punishment, aren't you? But I think the biggest thing Em and I have learned is to surround yourself with people you trust that know stuff about stuff that you don't know.
Yeah,
So, we've got advisors we've got multi-exited founders, we've got an economist who's a great advisor to us, we've got an AI and clinical data scientist who's a wonderful advisor, we've got a tax specialist, we've got all these people that know stuff that we have a vague idea about, but not to a high level. And so these people are so valuable to us. And Victor, he's incredible. And having this like skill set, the expertise around us has been amazing. And then
mm,
finding communities that understand what on earth you're doing. So there's a community I'm a member of that's female founders, and so they're all up against it because currently only 2% of investment goes to female founders, and so they're really trying to make a change, and really trying to sort of shine a spotlight on female entrepreneurship, and that's really powerful. And then there's Mums That Build. There's all these communities where there's people like me that are founders and mums and also have another job to try and bootstrap what they're doing, and seeing that other people can do it gives you the confidence that you can too. Like even posting on LinkedIn, I wouldn't even have posted on LinkedIn a year ago, and now I'm a total LinkedIn pain in the backside, and that's been a real learning curve for me as well. I
Mm,
think just like the old saying of today's headlines are tomorrow's chip paper. Same for LinkedIn. You can, as long as you're not writing anything that's wrong or controversial, then it's likely to just no one's going to read it in a week's time. So getting over the LinkedIn ick was massive for
mm.
me. It was huge.
Yeah, I like LinkedIn.
Well, that's where I met you, I think, wasn't it? You're a
Yeah,
LinkedIn
yeah.
friend.
I'm a big LinkedIn merchant, but I never used to be, and I think it's like I think LinkedIn is very good because like professionally, it like you're connecting with people who are in your profession. So for me, for
Totally.
this podcast, the one bit of advertising I probably do is through LinkedIn.
Mm,
Um, but like because I never posted it on my Facebook or Instagram because it's like my family, my friends, they're not into the pet industry. Do you know what I mean? It's like, hey, my friends who I used to play football with for years, who listen to my podcast where I'm just talking about the pet
but
industry.
they might be.
Like, if they really are, they can still listen, but it's they're not my target audience, if you know what I
No.
mean. And so LinkedIn is a very good way of actually getting people who have got similar career professional goals to actually like melt in together and actually talk to each other about what they like.
And initially, I didn't rule it out as a platform for reach for us, but as a professional platform, I knew it was useful. But also, professionals have pets, so I
Yeah.
was like, oh, hang on a second, like, why have I neglected this platform when lots of these people also resonate with what we're doing? They all have pets. Lots of most of our investors are pet owners, and because they see the value, they've been in that position, they understand what we're trying to solve, and the same with people on LinkedIn. Some of our biggest advocates of what we're doing, have come across us on LinkedIn, which is
Mm.
incredible. I wrote a post about my earliest memory of tech, which was unpacking a Viglin computer with my mum in the 90s, like hilarious, really. And somebody from a huge drugs company was like, oh, my mum was in tech too. And she messaged me and we had this lovely conversation and we had a meeting off the back of it. So it's amazing once you learn to put yourself out there, the kind of doors that it will open for you.
Yeah, and no, there is an element of like if you're true to what you're doing and you're just you have a plan in your head and like
Mm,
people will come along. Uh,
totally.
So and
But
it's
as I think as well, I used to think that having like being myself, and having like personality and being professional was sort of like mutually exclusive. Like, oh, I can't say that. That's not very professional. But actually, the things that I say or put out there that are very, very me are far more, people resonate with far more than me being like, oh, something much more serious.
but also just think about it like on a logical scale. If you're reading a post and it sounds like it was written by
Oh,
ChatGPT
don't even
and
start me on
it's somebody,
ChatGPT.
but no, but it's someone who they're just sort of like, oh, you know, 5 years working for so and so today. It's been a great time working for a
Wave
great
flag.
company, and it's like here's me and the team, and we're all standing there in suits. It's like,
Yeah,
whereas if it's stuff which is real, and
yeah.
people are talking about things from their personal perspective, now you can like or dislike that person as a result, but you'll have a connection with them and you'll understand them more than some copy paste garbage. Which
Absolutely. People are fostering like they've never fostered before. Like, when did you ever see the word fostered written in copy until about 2 years ago? And now everyone's fostering everything. And it stinks of AI and all the rocket emojis. I'm just like, oh, bore off. I love to write. It's something that I really enjoy to do. I sometimes freelance and write for magazines. I've written for like Horse and Hound and My Horse so I love to write. So when you see something that's just totally AI driven, now I'm not against AI. I'm not against AI for sort of like augmenting processes and helping automate things. I'm really pro tech, but write your own posts. I just
yeah,
I just find it really and you can what if you can smell it a mile off because everyone's posts are becoming the same. Like
yeah.
it's yeah, it is. I think I think the platforms are going to start picking up on it and not promoting posts that are AI driven because
But I think people don't really like. react to them anyway.
Yeah.
So it kind of ends up that way.
And the AI comments as well are, they just take a little snippet about what you say and then they automatically reply to it. I'm like, oh, come on.
Uh, I mean, AI tools are actually they've gone so much further than I ever thought. To be honest,
It's incredible.
yeah,
Which is why we got ourselves an AI specialist because we're like, this is, how can we use AI to augment what we're doing? Not in the means of, it's not going to remove the need for a vet to write a prescription or anything, but how can we use it to help with our data management? How can we use it to organize things? But it's we haven't got to that point yet. We need to get the processes fully nailed down and in place, and then we can look at it. But having Adele on board to help us with that is incredible. She's it's a world that is only going to get bigger. It's a topic that's only going to get more, yeah, more gravity, isn't it? More, no, what's the word I'm looking for? More momentum. And so having somebody on our board that advises us in that way is worth its weight in gold.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. So, what's the future looking like at the
What's
moment?
the future looking like at the moment? So our funding round closes in June. So like I said, we're over the halfway point in terms of money on board. So we're
What
hoping.
are you raising, if you don't mind me
We're
asking?
raising 250, so we're raising our
Okay.
SEIS allowance with an agile top up of 150. So we can at the same valuation go over that.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to get a government grant, so we got a grant funding for a front end rebuild.
Yeah.
So that's in the pipeline at the moment, and we also managed to get funding for our go to market strategy. So we've got a lovely fractional CMO on board now called Michelle, who is helping us to point our efforts in the right direction and get the most bang for our buck. We're looking to launch in Q2 this
Yeah.
year, so it will be the basic version of so our,
Would-
our MVP with a bit more fluff.
Was that the one I used? Because I
Yeah,
played with your beta version, and I
did you? Yeah.
yeah,
So it will so the search will be the same, but the front end will be much prettier.
yeah,
So we've got some lovely designers making us a shiny new front end at the moment and a rebrand. So I think it's called the millennials, well, no, the Gen Zs call it a glow up. We're having a glow up.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't
down
know what that means. To be
down with
honest.
the lingo.
Yeah, oh
You go, I'll
god,
be TikToking in no
fam,
time.
right,
Yeah.
fam, yeah.
I know. So yeah, I think that's the plan. So get it out there, and then we're already starting to develop. So obviously Victor's developed the beta. And we're starting to build out these client profiles now to make sure that we can provide them with the service that we really want to do. So taking the mental load out for them really, and help them manage their medication schedules. And the prescription writing software we've also started as well. So not the full integration with the practice management system, but we had huge veterinary demand for the prescription writing software to take that again mental load and
Yeah.
time away from them. So we're sort of we're sort of skipping over phase 3 at the moment and parallel building phase 2 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the
Cool.
CMA review, the findings will be launched in the autumn. So they've sent out some working papers recently to sort of hint. I'll send them to you if you're interested. They were
Yeah. Yeah.
they were really interesting to hint at the sort of things that they were problems they were trying to solve. And it's 50% of owners don't know that they can buy online, and I think they said 14% do regularly, and it's just those percentages. You're just like, we can do
Well,
better.
I'd just like to see vets being forced to actually provide consumers with the option.
Mm. And I think
Right.
the vets on the ground really, really want the best of their pets.
Yeah.
I think it's the time that they don't have to handhold them through the process. But if they could say to someone, actually, they will hand you through. The Petscribers will handhold you through the
Yeah.
process. Go there, have a look, and they will help you with the rest. At least they would feel like they've done their due diligence. They've not sent them out into the wild to buy chalk from Amazon.
Yeah.
They'll be sending them somewhere safe. And the number of people that don't even know what the VMD is or how to tell that something's safe is quite
Yeah.
incredible.
And look, with like I say, the whole Yumu thing with the Chinese
Yeah.
fakes coming over and being sold on Amazon and that sort of stuff. It's yeah, there is always we have got to be careful
Yeah.
continuously.
And when we were doing our research, we found sort of like controlled medications, not controlled, sorry, but highly coveted antibiotics on Etsy. We found them on I found,
Handmade ones.
well, you joke, but it was marbofloxacin, so like a really high level antibiotic. On flipping Etsy, I found drugs on Facebook Marketplace, and people don't realize, well, or maybe they do realize that selling medication on those sorts of platforms is illegal. Like they do, nobody knows how they've been stored. They think, oh, my dog passed away. Maybe someone else could make use of these medications, but you can't sell them. It was wild. I think, yeah. So eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Etsy. It was it was wild. And when you realize that these platforms that you theoretically trust don't have any, they're third party retailers, they don't have any control over what they sell. It's sort of, it's yeah, it was mad really. So it really reinforced mine and M's why we want people to know they can buy medication online, and we want them to be able to do it really
I, th-
safely.
I think that's the difference between eBay and Etsy and let's say Amazon is that like I think where the Amazon one where it caught people is that they still have the marketplace thing, and it's not always obvious when the product is Amazon bought and owned and bought from the
Mm.
manufacturer, or whether it's like buy from accounts Joe 9123.
Do you know, I'm not sure I'd know either.
Because you have to go down and see who the seller of the item is.
Oh wow.
And it's like where because a lot of things could be like supplied by Amazon,
Yeah.
delivered by Amazon, but then other ones will be
Joe
because it,
blogs.
it could be a prime product,
Yeah.
but it's done by like some guy who's running out of his shed
Oh
in his
geez.
back garden.
Well, there we
And
go.
but again, because and this is why the Amazon thing caught a lot of people out because with eBay and Etsy, you kind of know it's small time sellers.
Yeah.
Whereas the Amazon one caught a lot of people because they just assumed I bought it from Amazon. It's Amazon.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna like why wouldn't it be good? Because again, there's these
Well,
intermediaries
there's that
floating around.
trust. Amazon have people's trust, and we're really hoping that by promoting transparency and the fact that we are vets will inspire trust in people, that we're trying to build something to help rather than to hinder. We're trying to promote transparency, but we do need to really get over that sort of trust, that trust barrier of people, because we're a newcomer. So anything that we can do to promote that, we're really happy to be involved.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a million for coming in,
Oh, you're
Angela.
welcome, and I'm sorry I was late.
No, that's all right. It's all right. It's all good. It's all
Cross
good.
country
I'm
didn't go so well for me
I'm
today.
I'm super chill about everything.
So you are super chill.
Yeah, no, I'm super chill. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're
you
super
know,
chill.
you know, I've got to go some to get me at the point where I'm annoyed about something. So.
Oh, I could try harder next time.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, it can be there. You can get there,
I'm
but it's
joking.
not. No, it takes a while. But yeah, and thanks for bringing your little fella in as
Oh,
well.
George. Yeah, thanks for letting him in. He's had a lovely time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.